Welcome along to Steve Wraith's True Crime Podcast, and we've had a lot of villains on the show so far. It's about time we straighten it up a little bit by having a former prison officer on, and I've got Sam. How are you, mate? Neil Samworth.
I'm good. I'm quite sure, Steve, some people might see people like myself as villains. Do you not?
I think it's been great because I've seen your other podcasts, you know, with my good friends Sean Atwood and James English, and you know, they've been very kind to me.
Good guys.
Giving me the opportunity to follow in their footsteps by putting me in touch with a few different people. So I've got to give a big shout out and thanks to them. And if you haven't watched their podcasts, please get on them because there's some fantastic interviews. And although we interview a lot of the same people, I don't think there's ever been an interview that's the same kind of interview. There's always something new comes out, and especially with Sam's stories. Sam seems to remember a different story, you know, and goes off on a different tangent. But we're going to start at the beginning, Sam. Where were you born? Where were you brought up?
Right, well, I was born in Sheffield. Hicks Road, it's still there. I thought it had been knocked down. Walkley in Sheffield, so 1962. Brought up as a single parent household, really. My dad sort of took off when I was about maybe 2. I've got a sister, she's just 12 months younger than me. Funnily enough, in the book, obviously, you know yourself writing books, they have to run sort of a legal team over it and things like that, publishers. Make sure you're not going to incriminate yourself, no comebacks, no slander cases or anything like that. There was very little in my book they come back with, other than I said Tony, who was my dad. We call him Tony because he was never really a dad. He was a sort of womanizing, gambling, drunken, woman bashing scumbag like, and they said that I couldn't really say that. So I you know, we basically thought that a dad should be as opposed to that. So as far as I'm concerned, my mum brought us up along with my nan and the rest of the family. I've said this before, Steve. A lot of kids don't get any love. We didn't have a lot. I mean, my mum always worked 2 or 3 menial jobs, or what people would look at menial, you know, going and cleaning for people in private homes. Struggled to buy shoes, school uniform, that sort of thing. But we had loads of love, you know, and I had a childhood that, you know, when I look at my own daughter now, I think I was privileged. We could go out. I went out with my mates from quite a young age. We'd go out in countryside, up on moors, take the dogs, things like this. You know, there were no laptops or mobile phones or anything else. Education-wise, hated school from day one. From being 5, I can remember my mum taking me first class I was in at Lidget Lane. Had a bit of a cry, first lad in class, and I detested it all the way through. We moved about Sheffield quite a bit, like you do. Couple of council estates, things like that. You know, people always mention these sort of things. 17, well, I was just 16. I got kicked out at 6th form of King Edward School. Well, I got asked to leave. The last couple of years, the only thing that kept me there was rugby, which been a solid basis for me all my life pretty much till I got injured in 2012. You know, it was something I was passionate about, and it allowed me to, shall we say, express myself and get rid of frustrations. So, as a young lad, used to do what everyone else did. I'm sure you must have done it yourself, or maybe not. I don't know. You know, you go out, have a drink with the rugby lads or whatever, or your mates from work. You inevitably get into a scrap, bit of fisticuffs, no knives, no booting people in head. You know, pick them up after, maybe have a pint, and it was done. But unfortunately, I got caught 4 times. I ended up in court. The last time I was in, the judge recognised me, and he basically said, if I see you again, then I'm going to lock you up, which was a bit of a worry, obviously, because people were scared of prison, or I was growing up. I didn't know what it was about, but I was scared of coppers and authority, like people were. So, you know, it was a bit of a wake-up call. Got back into my rugby. Engineering, you know, people talk about me being an ex-prison officer, but I did 23 years in engineering. It's an odd environment to work in. That my stepfather worked at Orgreave Pit, yeah? So he worked alongside miners, he worked down the pit. Professions and like tough, but engineering, same. Heavy engineering, scary shit. You know, there's times when, not so much now because the prison's sort of taken over, but you'd have nightmares, you know, you'd smash a machine up or something at work, or one of my mate's brothers, he should have died. He was on a borer, which is a machine. Basically, it's you get a block of metal, round block of metal. You have an arm that goes down into it, and it makes it into a hole, like pottery, but engineering-wise. Big lumps of metal. And between the metal and the arm that's doing the cutting was maybe a foot. And I saw him get ragged into that machine. It ragged him through that small space, chucked him out the other side to a wall. Should have smashed every bone. He should have been dead. But he wasn't. Cuts and bruises, shock, had a couple of weeks off work. So like I say, I've seen some bad shit and some scary shit in engineering. So just, you know, going straight to the prison officer, it's sort of doing that down. Mm. I work lots of menial jobs. I'm sure people do this in life. You know, everything isn't fulfilling. You know, some jobs you enjoyed the people you work with, got your money, got pissed Saturday night, played rugby Saturday, got pissed, had a curry. You know, that sort of thing. That's how a lot of people live their lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of brings me up to about 1998. I've been married twice. First one, when I was 21, was one of them things, again, that some people might have done. Went through a bad time in my life. I lost my mum. She was only 38. Fell down, hurt a knee, banged a knee, couldn't get upstairs. She was on settee a few days. Doctor come, said, I want her in hospital. There's something not right. She was in hospital 2 weeks. I saw her twice. The second time I saw her, I knew she was going to die. Like I said, she was young. Her immune system just packed up and she was gone. So that was just before my 21st birthday. The last I was seeing then, I fell out with, got with another girl, got married. And very shortly after that, I fractured my skull playing rugby. Which, looking back now, it's only this year, 2020, that I've looked back. When I actually fractured my skull, played it down. My family were concerned. I lost my vision for a bit. I had a big clot on the side of me. I could have died that weekend, quite definitely. And I did play it down a lot. But now, looking back, that was the first time that something really affected my life, because for two years I had nightmares. I had nightmares about going back on a rugby pitch. You know, I'd imagine going on, looking up, catching a ball, banging heads, my brain falling out and all sorts of mad shit like that. But now looking back, that was definitely PTSD. You know, it wasn't talked about then. And other than yourself and James English, I've probably not spoke to anyone about it at all, really. Yeah. But this is how things that affect your life. But, you know, obviously, if you fast forward now, these things are becoming a bit more common, but still quite misunderstood.
Yeah.
So,
one of those things people tend to, you know, bury under the carpet. Men in particular, we don't like to admit that we're weak. We don't like to talk about those kind of things. And something as traumatic as that, I think the first, by listening to your story, as I have a couple of times now, I think it's the trauma that you probably suffered by your dad leaving, you know, and your dad's behaviour when you were a kid. But then subsequently the rugby injury, you know, that injury to your skull as well. It's probably, you know, it's double trauma, isn't it, really?
Well, like I said, I made light of it. The consultant said that, you know, really I should have been dead. No question about it. But at that age, I dismissed that. I just went on the piss and that because I couldn't play rugby. My life was a bit out of control, you know. Some really mad stuff. I ended up with 2 mortgages. Then I had 2 houses repossessed. I ended up homeless, living in a squat, which, you know, people laugh about, but it's where you end up. I've always said, you know, I've been hungry and I've been homeless, but not at the same time. So all these poor souls that find themselves on the street, you know, things like that have affected me a lot. I've realised, Steve, I am a people person, you know. looking at me, like yourself probably, maybe if you trimmed your beard and had a bit of a like porn tash, you'd look like a classic screw. You're 6'2",
Yeah.
you know, more athletic than me, i.e. not as fat. You know, I'm 6 foot, bald head. People look at me and think, yeah, it's a screw.
Yeah.
But, you know, contrary to that, you have a look round, you have a look at your neighbours, your auntie, your uncle, maybe your grandma or whatever. They're all prison officers. Yeah, that sort of people. They're not all, there's not a lot of big lads about, you know, it's a vast spectrum. So you will find a dot about as well, but I'll get back on track. I'll get back on track. So about 1998, mate, again, looking at me, I'm doing some bouncing, yeah. Not hardest man, not a street fighter, but what I'm very good at talking. So, and the venue I worked at was called Anorans. I worked on my own. So you got some ex-football stars in there. You got some big hitters. A lot of the people from the posher end of Sheffield, which aren't necessarily the nicer people to try and get at your pub at end at night. I was doing that to earn some money. Always makes me smile is I had my own massage business. Now this is legit. We're talking about sports massage, reflexology, yeah, not the sort where when I'm doing anyone any favors other than sorting out the sore muscles. Yeah. Again, you know, I'm getting ridiculed for this because people are looking at me. Rugby lads are ridiculing me. I also did a bit of teaching in the community. Aromatherapy, which is it's based about plant-based oils, smells, massage again. And every single one of the people who attended them courses were female. So, for instance, I'd turn up at Manor, which quite a roughish part of Sheffield, you know, pure working class. I'd be in some school hall, 50 women would turn up and me, and they'd be like, have you come for this course? And I'd be like, no, I'm delivering it to you. And they'd be all like, you know, that sort of thing. But there you go. So I was earning a crust, but I was spreading myself thin. Doing the doors was becoming tiresome. So I had a friend. So what he suggested was I get in touch with his company, and they were called NICE, Nursing in Secure Environments. I believe they're still going. This side of the Pennines, based towards Leicester, and the ex-prison officers. And what they did, they set up with a company providing bank staff for forensic units. Now, forensic unit is just a mental health hospital building, that sort of thing, you know, where we're looking after people with mental health issues. The ones that I signed up to were quite acute. You know, these were people who'd been to Broadmoor, High Security Hospital, we've all heard of that. They've been to Ashworth, and they've been to Rampton. You know, we've all heard of Rampton. So these people could be quite violent. They got a long history of mental health. They were all female. Pretty much every one of them self-harmed. Very sadly, one of the nurses, when I first went to work there, she says, just have a look at a few files, Sam. Just a few. She says, if you look at more than a couple, you know, it'll get you. So just pick two up at random, have a read, come back to me and we'll have a chat. So I had a read. They've all been abused, whether it's rape, abused as kids, that sort of things. Yeah. Some people, unfortunately or sadly, are born into mental health, can I say. I don't know whether it, you know, it comes from the parents.
Yeah.
You know, there's recognised things like schizophrenia. Yeah. And there's other people who become mentally unwell through trauma, incidents, that sort of thing. I think one of the saddest cases, to put it across, Steve, was a young lass. I can still remember her face now. She was 21. So she'd been locked up since she was 14, there or thereabouts. Might have been 14, 15, that sort of thing. And she'd been troublesome. Once she got locked up, she's a normal kid, been through some trauma. She became violent. When you get into the sort of institutional life, you're in care and things, and you become problematic, you become violent or whatever, you exclude yourself possibly from ever getting out. sadly. And what this lass had done, her sister was either a year or a couple of years younger. They'd had abusive parents, and her sister had set the house on fire. Her parents had died. The coppers, Crown prosecution, everybody knew the younger sister had done it. She said nothing, and the elder sister chucked her hand in and said it were me. So she'd been locked up when I saw her about 7 years. Pretty girl, she showed me a picture. She says, "Can I show you a picture of my sister?" I says, "Yeah, I'd love to see a picture of your sister." You have to be very careful as a male in these environments. You know, you can't leave yourself on your own with a female. A lot of them have problems with males. So, you know, it all has to be done sort of, if you're in someone's bedroom doorway, then you're making sure someone's watching you. Yeah. Anyway, show me a picture of a sister. She says, "Pretty girl." I said, "Yeah, pretty girl." She says, "That's me." So I'm looking, and I looked at her. In the picture, she must have been, I don't know, a size 10 or something like that, you know, pretty petite girl. As I'm looking at her, I don't know, she must have been 20 stone at least. And that's the medication, Steve. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of the medication people take who are mentally unwell, they put massive amount of weight on. And that in itself then becomes an issue. Especially, can you imagine a young girl, 21, massive weight issues. So, you know, that was very sad. And she was really violent. She probably would get reviewed every couple of years. So if she had any sort of violent episodes or whatever, then she just remain incarcerated. So, you know, that were quite, and there were more of them women in there. You know, it was a sad place, but I enjoyed working. The staff were amazing. Mm-hmm. Most of the mental health nurses were female. They would sort of supervise, deal with medication, and then the prison officers or people like myself, what they call nurse support workers. Yeah. So you would go in. Bear in mind, this is someone's living space. You know, it weren't a bouncer thing or anything like that. You go in there, you know, maybe trackies and if you wanted to go in garden, you could take them in the garden. It was all cameraed up. And some of them, a lot of them would be on one-to-ones, acute self-harmers. So if she went for a lay down on bed, you might be sat in the doorway. Again, you've got the privacy. The door's not shut. But again, you've got to be careful and not leave yourself in any positions. Yeah. So I worked there a couple of years. It was an amazing place to work, very rewarding, as well as being sad. Yeah. Anyway, my mate says, you know, you need to get in prison service, Sam. At that time, public sector weren't setting on. So I applied to Forest Bank in Salford. I think it was about 2001, I actually got a job. It had been open from 99. So when I joined, the staff had some experience. They got some good staff, and it was a nice, clean, pretty well-run prison. What people have to understand about prisons, any prison, is when a prison first opens and you've got new staff, you get experience coming in there, and the experience is the prisoners. They take advantage. They take the piss. They'll intimidate people, you know. So they always say any new prison, that's public or private sector, the first 2 years are the hardest time when it could kick off. So I've just joined at the end of that period. I was there, I think 3 years. I worked with young offenders first, 18 to 21-year-olds. On Twitter and things like that, obviously there's a lot of people immersed in the prison thing. There's families of people who've got people inside, ex-prisoners, ex-officers. And then there's these reform groups who refer to these 18 to 21-year-olds as kids, which is fine. But I remember when I was, you know, 20, 21 playing rugby, I was a big lad. Yeah. You know, a big, powerful lad. And these individuals are violent. It's all about image. You know, if somebody disses one of them or disrespects it, however they want to say it, you know, they'll fight. And there were fights pretty much every day. Yeah. And there were some quite bad staff assaults as well. So I have no problem with people calling these people kids. How we manage them needs to change, because a very, very sad side effect was we had, 6 lads on there, aged 18 to 21. The vast majority of others were petty crime, twocking, taking cars without permission, you're all about that. I don't mean you're a twocker. You know, what I would call petty crime, violence, vandalism. These 6 lads we had were armed robbers, and they were very good at them. One of them were on his second sentence. He was 18. He got his first sentence for armed robbery at 13. So, yeah, at 13 he's a kid. At 18 you can call him a kid, but he's on his second sentence for armed robbery. They were very well organised. They were very forward thinking. They weren't doing banks like some people do. Because, you know, the other thing is, I'm very easy to get on. So prisoners and that, when they get to know you, you talk, and I have an interest. Like yourself, you know, my interests come from within inside. So I'd say, right, lads, what's the typical Saturday? Right, Samo, we meet at McDonald's, have breakfast, decide what we're going to eat. Midweek, nick a car, replate it. Following Saturday, we're doing his robbery. Like I said, they weren't doing banks. They were going out of town. Popular pubs, supermarkets, post offices, village post offices, this sort of thing. You know, they were doing places where they knew if there was an alarm, they were off on motorway. And this is at 18 and 21.
Yeah.
I did see all these lads again at Strangeways, but I also saw 24 lads who were on their wing at that time who went on to be armed robbers, because they saw what they got. They saw the Subarus, the Porsches, the women, the night trainers, and they wanted that. And they went on, you know, to become armed robbers. So that side of it, with young offenders, we definitely need to do something else. I then went to work in a segregation unit at Forest Bank. Do you want to say anything? Because I can talk for Britain.
Listen, I enjoy listening to your stories, and I'm sure the people who watch this will enjoy listening. And I'm a great believer in letting the person speak. But once you start coming to a natural end on something, I will jump in. But at the moment, I love listening to your stories, Sam.
Okay, that's good. So, like I said, I then went to the segregation unit. So, for people who don't know, segregation unit used to be called the block, the shoe in America, the chokey, whatever you want to call them. Single cell occupation, used to be for bad boys. So your violent people, your mentally unwell people, they used to be housed down there. You know, people didn't get recognised as being mentally unwell. So somebody who was violent because they weren't taking a medication or whatever ended up down the block. I've worked with lads who used to work down the block. I hate saying this, but I'm going to say it, back in the day. Yeah. One lad who's really nice, you know, he 70s, 80s, he said it was brutal. He worked down there. He's the sort of guy that if you stepped out of line, he got a line. You know, if push come to shove, it was going to happen. I've worked with lads who worked down there who were brutal. You know, some of the stories. I remember 3 lads talking. And this, again, me, Steve, going, I'm an angel, do you know what I mean? I'm not. Yeah. I wouldn't have been part of this. I couldn't have worked down there. And these lads were talking, so I'm sort of listening, and they were bragging about when they were down there, all the lads down Strangeways in the block, they were all big. They're all gym heads. A lot of them were on gear, and it was brutal. You know, they talk about Bronson being down there and things like that. So it was brutal. Now, I've worked with prisoners who are violent and brutal, yeah, and you have to manage them. And at times, you know, it's a contact sport or whatever. But there's a difference between that and I'll take a point from Alan Lord, one of the Alan Lord interviews. Yeah. So Alan Lord, he's on the roof Strangeways riots. So if anyone's heard his name, that's why.
Yeah, we're gonna have Alan on the show next week. So
well, there you go. There you go. So I'll give you 2 points and you can ask him one. And maybe me and him will get to chat one day. I don't know. So anyway, he said first time he's down the block, he's obviously from an ethnic background. He's walked the wrong way. They used to have tiles round the block, so you had to walk round the tiles. It's like control. So if you come out of your cell here and the shower's the opposite side of the landing, you followed the tiles. Yeah? You walk straight across, you're getting a good hiding. So he's walked the wrong way into a cell, and as he's gone in, someone's called him a black bee and rabbit punched him in the back of the head. Now, way these lads were talking, that will have happened, yeah? So then people like Alan Lord think, like I would, if somebody did that to me, you know, you'd be thinking, right, you know, you're having this, I'm not having that, you know, especially young people, you're not going to take it. So they were talking about brutality, and they were talking about governor's rounds. Because the segregation unit, anywhere in the world, you know, it's like social isolation. Prison governors visit every day. So they go around and they might have a minute with each prisoner, checking on the welfare and that. The prison healthcare doctors, they visit regular. The chaplains visit regular. You know, it is recognised that isolation can affect people. And they were talking about a governor had come down, so he was doing the rounds. One of the lads went to the first cell. The lad had got up and he knocked him out. One arrowed him, yeah? Now, we're not talking about me stood with you, gonna fight, and I knock you out. We're talking about a sly dig. You know, he blindsided him and knocked him out. The governor said, you know, can I speak with Smith? And he says, oh, he's asleep. We'll see whether he's awake, that sort of thing. And they were laughing and bragging about it. You know, there's no need for that. That's not big and it's not clever. Mm-hmm. A lot of prison staff who I met, especially those who've been in a long time, might not agree with that, but wouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like what happens in prison stays in prison. You know, there was a culture. Obviously, we got whistleblowing legislation now. Plenty of police out there coming forward, you know, and it's there to protect them. Yeah. The prison service, for me, even today, there's not a willingness to deal with issues, you know, staff prisoner related. And, well, I'll give you an example. I was involved in an incident with a senior officer. So he's the next step up from prison officer, yeah?
Yeah.
He's been giving people digs. You know, his behaviour was disgusting. You know, he was a bad bully. So I reported him to the next line of management above him. Yeah? The wing PO, principal officer. Now, my aim of reporting him was for him to get him and say, listen, this behaviour is not acceptable. Mm-hmm. What he did, the principal officer, he went to a governor and said, Sam has reported X for knocking the shit out of people. Yeah? And then he smiled about it. Obviously, a prison governor gets informed that it's a serious matter. And it went to investigation. There was a couple of lads there with me when this incident happened. They both sort of, what they did was they gave their version of events. My version of events was quite simple. You know, he grabbed hold of someone, knocked the shit out of him, or tried to, and we'd had to pull him off him. It was an unprovoked attack and it was unnecessary. So it went to investigation for 6 months before I actually went into the investigation. Prison staff were turning their back on me. Yeah. My own staff on my own wing knew what was it about because it'd ruined the wing, this manager. Other staff, you know, physically coming in the morning, you know, conversation just got quiet. People wouldn't say anything. People staring, that sort of thing. 6 months. I remember walking on a wing. It was a wing, and there was a senior officer. Again, he's a manager of a wing. You have one of them on every wing. And he comes straight up to me. He says, what are you doing on here? I says, I'm working overtime. He says, well, don't get involved in any incidents, because if you do, my staff won't back you up. Like, so I looked at him, you know, told him what I thought of him in no uncertain terms, and I walked off the wing. I went into the centre office. There was a governor there. I said, I'm going back to the healthcare, which is why I worked. He says, why? And I said, you know, basically, I said what he'd said, and nothing else was said. And people were like that.
Yeah.
A couple of lads I worked with off my wing started correcting people. One of them got pulled. I talk about him in my book. He's called Nobby Nobbler. I'd never use his real name. A proud man, a really decent prison officer. He was an ex-squaddy, funny, dry, but an absolute cracking officer. And somebody said, one of his friends said to him, who's this twat Samworth like talking about me? I went, hold on a minute, let me put you straight. So they started straightening people up. And gradually, it come round. But when I actually went in my part of the investigation, the prison governor, a prison principal officer, and a union man went in with me. Now, I didn't want the union man. I told him to go away. He said to me before we went in, you've got this other guy in a sack. I said, perhaps him knocking shit out of people for no good reason is the reason he's going to get sacked and not because of me. Yeah?
Yeah.
I went in. It's very formal. What's your name? All this usual bollocks. They asked me nothing, Steve. It was like me and you talking now. You know, it's a nice day. Yeah, it's quite sunny. What have you had for dinner? Yeah, okay, thanks. And I'm out. He asked me nothing. You know, he got moved, but that was the sort of thing, like, so.
That was the way that they decided to handle it.
Yeah, you don't want to handle issues like that. I'm going to tell you this as well, because my mate Nobby Nobbler, he used to get off on this. Let me tell you, this lad, you would love him.
Yeah.
Big lad like yourself, 6'3", dry. And he was one of them who'd take the pin out of the hand grenade and throw it in, you know, in conversations. A shit stirrer. A shit stirrer, we probably called him.
For the record, I'm not a shit stirrer, guys.
but he was a funny guy, and, you know, I liked him a lot, me. I liked him a lot. So, grievance procedure in prison, like a lot of other jobs, if you have beef with someone, I was brought up in engineering, yeah? If I've got a problem with you and you're on shop floor, I go to you. If we can't sort it, you're good at next line of management. If they don't deal with it, that's how I used to do it. Prison service, no. Somebody, first one in, would go to a prison governor, and then, such as myself, would have a grievance put in against me. Now, I hope your viewers are very understanding, and I'm coming across as a sincere guy.
Yeah.
Because all the grievances that were put in were by female officers.
Wow.
Yeah. There's probably 5 or 6 grievances. Now, let me tell you a little phrase. This isn't my phrase. It was a female member of staff, another person, cracking officer, older lady than me, you know. You'd love her as your mother. She was a grandma and that, but she was a cracking prison officer. She said to me, it's tits and tears, Sam. What do you think? You know, there's a woman, she goes to a governor complaining about you, cries, look at you, you're the bad guy. We call it tits and tears. So I had 6 grievances put in with me. And what I am, Steve, I'm amicable. I'll get on with people. You know, I'll talk things out. But if I think I'm right, I am a right stubborn Yorkshire arsehole. Yeah?
Yeah.
Proper. You know, it'll be like, no. So when managers came to me and said, you know, this officer has put a complaint in, you've done this, you've done that, I'd be like, crack on. You know, investigate it, bring it on, do whatever. They never got investigated, Steve, because it was just, a lot of it is just malicious. If I have an argument with somebody, you call me a dick and I call you a dick, and then you run off and say, you know, it's like my dad's bigger than yours.
Yeah.
So anyway, that finished me with that wing. That was K-wing. That was my first place I worked in Strangeways.
Well, you know, going into somewhere like Strangeways, you're coming from, you know, what is probably like a hospital environment. You know, you're more of a nurse. You're going in as a prison officer to somewhere like Strangeways. Was there any apprehension or nerves on your behalf? I mean, you're a big lad. You play rugby. You've been a doorman. I think me and you were very similar, because when I did the door in Newcastle, I'm not a hard man, but I did it for 18 years, standing on the door. I'm a good talker and you know, essentially, you know, play down an argument and talk people out. And I didn't have any fear. But same for you. You're going into a prison environment. Is that different? Were you not a little bit apprehensive?
It's a good question. I'm glad you asked me that. Let's go to Forest Bank. So I worked there first.
Yeah.
So when I turned up for my interview, I'm in the car park. So you see the walls. I'm sat there for an hour. I went early because I'm travelling from Sheffield to Salford. I'm sat in the car park shitting myself. Yeah?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what's going on in there. Am I going to have to fight people? You know, legit. Am I going to be fighting all the time? Really apprehensive. Really, really nervous. I had my interview. I went on holiday to India before I started at Forest Bank. And beautiful place, India. I loved it. But back in my mind all the time about this job. When I started on the training, there were young people on the training. There were some youngsters. So I'm early 40s then, I think. 40, 42, something like that. So I've got life experiences of being about. I'm shitting it. On the course. Nerves are there, but it's something new and exciting. I need to challenge myself. There was youngsters, totally naive and clueless. The first time they took us in the jail, I seen a very different change in the dynamics of the group I was in. People got very nervous, and it was sort of a wake up and smell the roses. Anyway, I went in there. Very intimidating from day one, super intimidating. The wings there at that time had 86 prisoners on and 2 staff. They're not good odds, are they, mate?
No.
You know, they can tell you new, they're in your face. You're living on adrenaline pretty much. So fast forward Strangeways. I've been at Forest Bank. I already decided, so I'm going to HMP. It's going to be very different from a private sector. I decided when I went in there, go in, pretend you haven't worked in prison, you don't know nothing, see how people work, and, you know, take your lead from that. So even though I'd actually worked in that prison environment, going to Strangeways, again, you know, cacking myself, worrying about it. It is a very daunting. Forest Bank were daunting, looking at the walls. You know, Strangeways is an iconic building.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what people think who've never been in there or never worked there, but, you know, it's daunting. It's a big place, you know, quite overwhelming. So that's what I did. Unfortunately, on training, very early on, maybe I thought it was a couple of days. My mate said it was a week into it. So, you know, it's very early on in training. We had a young lady, shall we say, very similar age to me, took a dislike to me. Now, this was my first experience of tits and tears. It's not a term I'd use, you know, people would say it's chauvinist, sexist, but because a female member of staff, and she said it's females who first started using that expression, and I don't mind relaying that. But what she did, she took a dislike to me. She weren't good at communicating. She already thought after a few days, she knew how the job should be done. She went upstairs. To this day, I don't know what was said, but I know they cancelled our course for a day. They left us in a room, sat there crapping ourselves. The manager of training just come in, popped in, you know, get a brew or whatever, proper angry face. And then they started taking people one by one out of the room for 20 minutes. And I was the last. So when people were coming in, they were saying nothing. Quiet, sitting down, sitting down, sitting down. 2 lads before I went up, so they were the last 3. One of them come back in, he got tears in his eyes. I thought, oh, you know, what is going on here? So they calls me up. I gets up there. Again, I won't use the profanities. I gets up there, so there's the trainer, who's a prison officer. There's a PO, principal officer. There's another senior officer. 1, 2, 3, 4th member of staff. At this time, I can't remember who they were. I know there were 4 of them. The trainer was an old-style prison officer, a bit of a dinosaur. Towards the end of the course, I got on with him. I liked him. He didn't like me at first. You know, I was too loud, and I was a gobby Yorkshire twat who called everyone love, which he detested. So he said nothing. He was professional, you know, he's not going to call me anything, not going to use profanities. I sat down, the other three started, you're a C. So I looked, you're a C, you're a C, you're a C. So I'm like, no, they just shut me down. Give it this, 20 minutes non-stop bombardment. You're a C, you're this, you're that, you're a bully, you're not going to finish the course. So I'm sat there, I think I managed to get one sentence out. What have I done? You know, you're a bully, bum, bum, bum. So after 20 minutes of this, it was like, F off, away you go. So I remember walking down the stairs, about 3 flights of stairs back to our room. So, you know, I'm feeling a bit tearful myself. This is something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
A job one, a career. I've just been told that I'm not passing the course. I walked in the room, silence. This last big smirk all over her face. So I'd already thought on way down, you know, my nan taught me, you know, just be humble, always be humble. So I walked in, got my centre brew, stood up on my feet. I just said to everyone, look, I need this job. I fucked up. I'm sorry. You know, if I've upset any, I'm sorry, but I need this job and I need your help to pass this course. So that was that day. They left us there for an hour. We went home. As the course went on, and you'll know this yourself, it's very difficult for people, normal people, to hate someone who is reasonable. So the guy, bless him, who took the course, Graham, you know, this is week one. Week 2 he's been a bit different with me. Week 3 is coming around. Week 4 was starting to get on. Yeah. And he's realizing that this lass perhaps isn't what she, you know, and what she said. Anyway, we gets to week 8. We passes out that day. So the PO, who was going to be my manager on K-Wing, where my face placement were, I didn't know that at the time. Come up, he says, can I have a word outside? I went, yeah. He went, shook my hand. He says, I'd have put my money in my house on you not passing this course. He says, I've seen how you've been. I've seen how you've been with everyone. I know you've helped everyone. I know you did all the homework and passed it round. I know you've helped people after hours with the CNR, where we restrained prisoners, which I did. A lot of lasses were struggling on that course. An hour and a half after everyone had gone home, in our room, trying to help him with the locks and stuff like that. So he shook my hand. The #1 governor of Strangeways, Chris Sheffield, I'd never met him. He come in, he went round everyone. You know, they're all there. There's a bit of a buffet. People have got their family members there. I thought, he's not going to speak to me, this guy. Last person he spoke to. He come up, held out his hand. Mr. Samworth.
Yeah.
Mr. Sheffield. He says, I was going to sack you. You were the first prison officer who was going to get sacked from the Strangeways training centre. He said, we've had, I don't know, however many, tens of hundreds of people through here. You were going to get sacked. You're in the jail now. Don't let anyone down. So the #1 governor knew me from day one of walking on Strangeways. I had 6 months on Strangeways, which was quite tough because I went on as a bully. They'd all heard that I was a bully. Bob Haig, bless him, a prison officer of some standing who's no longer with us. He died, bless him, shortly after retirement. That's another thing. Prison service killed him, mate. He had a period of time on the sick. He was a lovely man, a cracking prison officer. He used to say, I'm not Johnny Concrete, which he wasn't, but the cons loved him. Do you know why? He was genuine. He'd take no shit, but he'd help him as much as he could. He come up to me first week, shook my hand. He says, I was told you were a bully. He says, I make my own mind up about people. He says, I don't see no bully in you. You know, so if you need any help while you're on here, come to me. And gradually over 6 months, you know, it sort of settled in. I became part of the team on K-Wing. On the retirement front, mate, when I started, it was about 18 months, they say, the average life of a prison officer after retirement. That's down to stress. That's not at retirement age. That's when you leave. Bob, bless him, I think he was 56. period of sickness. It made him really unwell, and he's no longer with us. And I saw a few people, quite fit lads and respected, have strokes and heart attacks, because it is a stressful job.
It is, because you're every bit a prisoner really in there when you're working. I mean, you're confined to that space. You've got the same stresses and strains. You're getting paid for it, but you're not getting paid a lot. And I think just give the people watching an indication of the the wages that you get, because I think there's a misconception that prison the prison staff get a lot of money for their time, but they don't, do they?
When I started, mate, Forest Bank, 22 grand, yeah?
Yeah.
You start on about 18, full money is £22,000, yeah? Strangeways, we started on about 17 or 18,000.
Yeah.
You used to have to work 10 years to get on full money. It's a lot less now. I think after 5 years, the top whack as a prison officer was about 29.5 grand, yeah? With as much overtime and as many unsocial hours as you want, mate.
Yeah.
Private sector is the same. I only just shredded my last P60s from Forest Bank from 2003, 2004. I was on 22 grand and I was earning 35, 36 grand a year. I was working that much overtime. Can work, you just work what you want. So now, private sector, Forest Bank, 22,000, yeah?
Yeah.
Public sector, 22 grand, mate. The great British system, instead of bringing the private sector up, they've lowered the public sector.
You get closer.
7 grand out of it. And now it's 22 grand a year to do that job, which is one of the reasons why, well, there's a couple of things about recruitment I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Very mixed courses. When I did private sector, it was a mixed course. Some young, middle-aged, men, women, varied. Strangeways, my training course again, some young, middle-aged, varied. Now, talking to a lot of prison officers, a lot of prison staff, ex-prison staff, it's almost like they're actually recruiting young people, lots of young people. There was a lad on our course who was 21, but when he went into Strangeways, got a wealth of experience around him. Yeah. Most of that experience has now left. There's a young lass who I'm talking to at the minute who is 22. So she contacted me about 6 weeks ago. Just read your book, Sam. I'm 22. I've been in job 18 months. It's helped me a lot reading your book, because what you said is what I'm seeing. I feel a little better. I'm thinking that possibly it's not a job I'm going to stay in, but I'm going to give it 12 months to see how it works out. But, I don't know what you were like, Steve. As a 19, 20, 21-year-old, I told you what I was doing. I was playing rugby, I was out drinking. I couldn't have done that job.
I was going off the rails a little bit. I had to discipline myself. I was, at that age, drinking a lot, playing football, out with me mates all the time, going to the football, getting into mischief at the football. And I got arrested around about that age just for, a misdemeanor, kicking something down the street. The police set us up. They arrested me on the street they said I kicked the bottle at a van, shouted at the van. I didn't. It was an unmarked van. The bottle didn't strike the van. I got lifted, stuck in the cell overnight. I was arrested at 7:30. They didn't let us out till 3:30. They caused me a lot of grief at home. But I was a bit of a nuisance to my parents. I was always battling with my dad, and ultimately for me, I decided just to do something about it. I ended up registering with a TA. I went into the Territorial Army, and although I didn't last very long in there, I did enough in that period of time, going each week, going away on weekends, to actually give myself that kick up the backside and discipline. And I ended up doing the door by fluke. I used to go out, on those nights I was going out, all my mates were kicking off, and I would always end up stopping my mates from having a fight.
You're like me, a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah, and the head doorman came up to me one night and said, "We've got a lad off at Christmas, Steve. Do you fancy working on the door?" He says, We'll make it worth your while. And I was going, "Me, work on the door?" And he went, Yeah. He says, I've watched you each week. He says, "You never get involved in the trouble." He says, "You're always pulling your mates away and calming it down." He says, "You'd be ideal." And that was it, God, I never thought that one conversation and me saying yes to get a bit of Christmas money and a bit of the bucket money that they used to have on the front door, would end up being an 18-year career. But it was, you know, it was the beginning of a really good job, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But that was my time, you know.
It's tough, isn't it? It's I don't know, but you know, the recruitment now, what they need to do, they need to be attracting, you know, people with life experiences.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not knocking youngsters, but you need prisoners will just see them as prey. You know, it frustrates me when people are going continually on about corruption. I saw a lot of it in private sector, and it's young people who get preyed on. There's a lad I'll tell you about, little story. I'm not going to mention his name.
Okay.
I'll start at the end, right? So now this lad is, I don't know his exact age, but he'll be 35, 40. He's got 2 kids. He's married, like most people, mortgage and that. So when I'm on the young offenders wing, he's 21. So he worked there for 18 months, then he disappeared. No phone call, no nothing. Just never came back. You know, prison chased him up and that, nothing. So about 2007, I'm in Strangeways on K-Wing. So there's a lad there who's come back from dispersal prison, which is long term. So we're chatting because I knew him really well. So he says, "You remember so-and-so?" I says, "Yeah." I says, "What happened with him?" He says, "Well, Mr. S, we were at him for 6 months to bring a phone in." So again, this is a young lad. They're impressionable. And what they'll do, they'll be nice. You know, it's an intimidating job. It's always intimidating. So they'll suck people in, you know, be a bit nice. Yeah, leave him alone and that, you know, sort of suck him in. Whatever way they do it, they got him to bring a phone in. So they arranged for a payment on the out. It was a decent payment at the time. I think he got about 600 quid, something they said. And he come in one day, he says, "I remember we're in cell." He come in, shut the phone up bed, said, "Right, we're done, leave me alone." He says, so we left him a couple of weeks, Mr. S, and we're back into him. So we got him bringing 2 litres of coke in with Jack Daniels at weekend. You know, he's bringing 4 litres of coke in, bottle of Jack Daniels in it. So cons are all on Jack Daniels at weekend. He said, we got him to bring another phone in. He's like, 600 quid. We're not like, no, 150 quid like. No, I want 600. Well, we'll bubble you. So, like a lot of people, they got nowhere to. He took, for me, the only way out. He left the job, didn't contact the prison, never came back. That's the only way out. He weren't a bad lad. When I say he was 21, he was a young 21. He looked about 18. He got no physical size to him. He got no interpersonal skills. He couldn't communicate well. Yeah. And I hear people going on about corruption, bent screws. You know, a lot of officers I work with, the scum, they show us up or whatever. Young, impressionable lad. Now, he's got a normal life. He weren't a bad person, but it's just, he was the wrong age. You know, he weren't even a mature 21. And people need to understand that.
You're talking about things getting brought in. There's been a lot of prison documentaries on over the last few years. I mean, there's been access into some of the toughest prisons. This is something which I've seen a lot with American jails, but now they've done it in the UK. I think that the thing that was highlighted massively on there was the amount of drugs that are in jail. It's become a major problem, and obviously with less prison staff being available. And prisoners, young and old, taking different types of drugs. What effects does that have on the prisons themselves? There's
massive. It's a drain. Firstly, drug use will definitely have gone up. Yeah. The reason it's gone up for me is dead simple. 2012 to 2015, prison service slowly brought in workforce modernisation. Yeah. What this was new ways of working. So I'll tell you how it happened at Strangeways in simple terms. These figures might have changed over years because, when you're telling a story. So if I've said 71 and then 80 at this place, it don't matter. The point is, Strangeways is one of the last prison to, I'm going to say suffer, because we did suffer, workforce modernisation. So 2015, February 28th, yeah?
Yeah.
Strangeways is about 80 staff short. So we're covering that with overtime. Yeah. Now, that's not necessarily all prison officers. That's staff across the board. But the vast majority were prison officers. March the 1st, 24 hours later, officially, we were all told we were approximately 12, 15 staff above what we needed. Yeah? They've not recruited anyone. They've not made anyone redundant. Yeah? They just changed the ways of working. So let's look at Strangeways. Let's look at any prison. What you need in any prison is enough staff to open prisoners up, which every prison's got. Then you need extra staff to deal with incidents, which you get daily. All them extra staff have gone. Office staff that used to be prison officers. Different groups, for instance, visits. You know, you've been plenty of visits.
Yeah.
Visits officers in Strangeways were their own group of staff. So they didn't work on wings. They worked visits all day. Legal visits in the morning, social visits in the afternoon. Workforce modernisation did away with them. Yeah. So that group's gone. They replaced them with wing staff. So when people would go on a visit, some staff would go with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, working on the basis that not everyone's on the wing. If half the people have left the wing, you only need half the staff, which makes sense. But then on visits, there's an incident. So when all these prisoners come back, none of the staff come back. So you've only got half your staff. You can't get people out. This is why pre-virus, the prison service was returning to 23-hour bang-up. Not enough staff to get prisoners out, run a regime, and deal with incidents. That's the whole of the prison service. You know, and one smug governor DM me on Twitter, our jail's got plenty of staff, we're running great. I'm like, you know, I'm chuffed for you, mate, I really am. But the other 95% are flat on their ass. Yeah. I know Strangeways, Forest Bank, Belmarsh, you know, Wakefield, don't matter where it is, there's not enough staff. And it's because they brought in these new ways of working. And it needs to change. You know, if they want to sort everything now, and this is getting back to the drugs, the reason drugs use has gone up because they're all behind the doors.
Yeah.
There's a little lad in Manchester, yeah? He lived 100 metres away from me, Steve. When I was an officer, I'd known him 15 years, right? Career criminal. He said that himself. I've interviewed him. He's a career criminal. He's never going to stop. So I saw him. So he's got a bad wound. So I said, what's that? I recognised it straight away. I hadn't seen that before. Spice. I said, what do you mean spice? Took spice, passed out, fell on the pipes in Strangeways. There's no radiators. They have pipes running through the cell. Fell on hot pipes, unconscious 4 hours, full thickness burn. Yeah. So I said, I nearly mentioned, I don't want to mention his name because he's well known and he's a likeable lad. And he weren't grassing, he was talking to me after I'd finished.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was an amazing conversation. He says, Sam, he says, 23-hour bang up. He says, it's boredom. You can't get anything done. You can't do anything. He says, I wake up, get a brew, have a joint of spice. It's dinner. Get me dinner, have a joint, wake up, it's tea. Watch a film, have a joint, it's the next day. That's why drug use has gone up.
Yeah.
It's not gone up because everyone's suddenly become addicts or anything like that. It's the bang up. You for today can't hang it. All the old cons, all the old lags who you visit, the craze and that, they'll all be used to lots of bang up. A lot of them say it was better. Time would go quicker. They get their exercise, they'd slop out, days would fly. Now, you know, the youth, and they can't hack it. So there's more drug use, more anger, more aggression, more assaults, prisoners on staff, prisoners on prisoners, more bullying. You know, self-harm has gone up. Self-harm, you know, people put the figures out. Again, I'm not knocking self-harm. I've seen serious self-harmers, you know, people who risk their life.
What's the worst case of self-harm you've seen in prison?
You know, them sort of questions, it's, okay, so we had a lad who went to Rampton, saw him cut his throat in front of me. Now, he was the sort of lad, he was a personality disorder. I could have intervened, I could have pressed an alarm bell and gone in. What I had was prisoner knowledge. I knew him. If I'd have pressed a bell, we'd have gone in, rushed him, stopped him. If he was that way inclined, he'd have gone back and doing it. He wasn't cutting here, so he didn't cut a vein. He was just hacking away.
Yeah.
You know, there's a good chance he could have died. It's because he was angry and frustrated. He didn't want anything from me. You know, it weren't manipulation, which everyone always thinks self-harm's manipulation. It was some of these people, less than 1%, maybe 1 in 1,000 prisoners, extreme self-harmers, they will go this way. It's their way of coping with life.
Yeah.
You know, that was, it would be gruesome. Do you know what I mean? I'm not easily shocked. Again, it's not like these things don't affect me, because quite definitely they do. If you look where I am now, these things have obviously affected me en masse. So some of the saddest, I'll tell you one of the saddest things. He's a young lad. I called him Mini Bronson, me. So do you know what joint enterprise is, Steve?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So just
do you want to explain it to the people who are watching, just in case?
Just for the customers, yeah. If me and Steve go on a night out and we're in a taxi and we don't want to pay, so we run off, and the taxi driver chases Steve, and Steve stabs him to death, and I'm there, and we run off, and then later we get caught, and it's found out I were there and have done nothing. I'm getting the same sentence as Steve. It's called joint enterprise. So this lad, very similar situation George just talked about, he's on a joint enterprise sentence of 10 years. So I saw this lad go from a normal location prisoner to a segregation prisoner. This is over a period of a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then ends up on healthcare. I remember the first time he self-harmed, he'd never done it. He was pissed off one day and frustrated. He managed to get hold of a razor blade, and he did a good cut down his arm, a good one. You know, deep, no thought, just straight in, bam, that way as well. You know, elbow to wrist. If you're going to kill yourself, you know, you're not cutting across, you're cutting down. He went on to become very, I called him Mini Bronson, Charles Bronson, again, if anyone doesn't know, you can Google him, a well-famous prisoner, very disruptive. He's gone through a period of mental health.
Charles Salvador now, guys, and I've just been speaking to him today. He passes on his best. I told him I was interviewing you today, and he said, can you pass on my very best to him? He's mellowed a lot.
I don't know, Steve, whether it's not. I don't know whether they have Kindles or they can read books in prison. But near Christmas, about 2019, I got a 4-star review. Yeah, it said, not a bad book for a screw. Enjoyed the bit where the cons were beating up the screws. 4 stars, Charles Bronson, which made me laugh. So I don't know whether that were him or not. Anyway, so this lad, back to this lad. So his behaviour's deteriorated so much. I'll forget the name of it. There is, you can get referred with bad behaviour onto, like I say, it's just gone out of my head, into a system whereby you will not be a normal location prisoner. There's lots of units throughout the prison system. Charles Salvador will have been on lots of these units. There's personality units, special intervention units, you know, certain secure units. They all have varying names, but basically you're looking at the most dangerous prisoners for whatever reason, or disruptive, and they are managed away from the normal population. The idea would be, once they challenging behaviour, that's what it's called. So this lad is referred to the challenging behaviour system. Now, once you're in that, that's tough, because he's going to spend a lot of time on small units. He might get some psychological input, not enough. Again, Charles Salvador will tell you that. Mental health input in prison, very tiny. So he went from getting his sentence to becoming disruptive, playing at it, to becoming a serious self-harmer, and a very, very, you know, like one in 1,000 prisoner, smashing cells, pulling electrics out, assaultative. That's my word, that. It's not real, but you know what I mean. And I saw him escalate, and I did tell him, you know, I tried my best. I had these conversations. I said, if you take a step back where you are now, you know, you're on this sentence, your behaviour in prison, if you seriously harm someone, another prisoner, a member of staff, or become so disruptive and dangerous that you end up getting sectioned or whatever, you might spend all your life in prison. And you say, look at Charlie Bronson. Yeah, there's a lad, got a 3-year sentence or whatever. He spent all his life in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm quite sure when he looks back, if he could change it, he would. Because every prisoner, and I used to ask them all, the high-profile ones, the dangerous ones, the well-known gangsters in Manchester, I used to ask them all, if you could go back to here, would you? And only one has ever said that he wouldn't change his life. And I'll tell you about him. He's a Salford lad. He's a big hitter. He's a proper fighter. First time I saw him in jail, I looked at him, Steve, unassuming face, but he got forearms like frigging Popeye. Mm-hmm. So, and his nose were flat. Boxer. This lad, a couple of years down the road, I would employ as a healthcare orderly. Now, the healthcare was a small unit. We had everything on there. It was like a lot of mentally unwell, a lot of physically unwell. The orderlies, prisoners that we had working on there, had to have special qualities, you know. They had to be quite tolerant because we had some rapists, child killers and stuff on there. And he was a cracking lad. On the out in Salford, would I like to bump heads with him? No, I wouldn't. He was called One Punch for very good reason, and it was either hand. But I said to him, like I'd asked all the others, I said, if you could go back, he says, I know what you're going to ask me. No. When I was 17, he'd already been in care system 5 years, and he said, I decided I was going to be the most powerful criminal I could be. And he says, I've achieved that. So if I could go back 17, the only thing I'd like to take back is the knowledge, so I've become a powerful criminal quicker and not make the mistakes I've made. So would he go back and change it? No, he wouldn't. But he's the only one I've ever met who's said anything like that.
You've come across some amazing names, and it would be, you know, remiss of me not to mention them. I've heard them on James and Sean's podcasts as well. In no particular order, the G family are certainly starting to put their head above the parapet on social media, looking ahead at doing books. Tell us a little bit about your run-in with Danny G in prison.
Right, Danny G. Well, first of all, Darren I met on K-Wing, 2627. He's told his story. He was on remand for 2 years for, I don't know whether he got a manslaughter or a murder charge. I was quite chuffed, actually, when I saw him on James English and he mentioned me, James English. You know, he sort of gave me a bit of a nod. And we did get on. But he was the brains of the family, but he was also a very cool, calm, and the undertones, again, he's another one you won't want to come against.
Yeah.
Right, Danny G. Danny G is an absolute brute. I got a few negative comments for how I described him. He's not that tall or whatever. So I will tell you, being a rugby player, when I first saw Danny G, and his reputation just preceded him, he's been in the prison a long time. As a youngster, he'll have been battered stupid. He'll have had kicking after kicking after kicking. So, you know, as he's matured, got stronger, he's used weights, he's become a prison nightmare because physically intimidating person, very powerful. But behind that is someone who's been abused, had the shit kicked out of him. So he's got that mental, I wouldn't say mental toughness, because I have no doubt he does suffer, you know, like they will, these long-term prisoners. But what he has, he is fighting against the system. So he has periods of calm, which I've seen, and periods where he's not so calm, when he is a handful. So I know who he is. We've had an incident at Strangeways, and I haven't exaggerated this. The Friday night part, I wasn't there. It was relayed to me, but I can well believe it. So basically, he's in the segregation. This lad, he's been on Cat A units. He has been on normal wings, but a lot of his prison career has been on special units. Yeah, he's a seg prisoner. You know, he's a bloody handful, and he's antisocial with it as well. So Friday night, it's got reported to me. Danny G's in the seg is kicked off. 11 staff have gone in with full kit. Yeah, I could pick 11 staff in Strangeways and go in and manage him. It'd still be daunting. But you know yourself, with door people. These door people like yourself, there'll be ones who can fight, ones who'll stand in background, push comes to shove, they're going to be knocking people out, you know, and it's a mix.
And you're the one who jump in the bin and pull the lid down.
Yeah, I've worked with plenty of them as well, mate. I never did that. I might have wanted to do it, you know, with the adrenaline, but you stand your ground, don't you?
Likewise, mate, yeah.
Yeah, so 11 staff's gone in with kit. Now, one of these staff, he's a dickhead. He's one of them officers. I don't like him. He makes your job harder. So I'll tell you what happened to him.
Okay.
They've gone in and they've tried to restrain him. Now, any normal prisoner, you get him to the floor and you'd restrain him. Danny G, big wrists, massive. When I saw him, his forearms, his neck and his ankles, he's got good connecting joints. I've said this before, a fit, strong lad. Not always fit, but definitely strong. Genuine 180 kilo bench press, 4 reps. Squatting 200 plus kilos. Massive power lifter type strategy with I'm going to fight the system brain. Yeah. Like Charlie. You know, Charlie, the reason Charlie did so much damage to people, he was super fit, but he was also, you know, he come from that street fighter brigade, he got the boxing, but he was fighting the system, weren't it? You know, and people who come up against Charlie, there'll have been some big screws who think, yeah, I'll have it. But if 6 were going in a cell to give him a levering, 3 of them might have been like, yeah, up for it. Another 3 will have been shitting themselves. And they know that, don't they? They will see that.
Yeah.
So 11 staff's gone in. The guy I'm on about, he's pulling helmets off people, Danny G, and throwing helmets out at cell. They're all trying to wrestle, you know. He's got a good solid power base. He got the officer I were on about, maybe 14, 15 stone, 6'2", about your size. Mm-hmm. Not as good looking though, might I add. And I didn't like him, so there you go. Yeah. So he's got back of his helmet and he's bringing it down to his groin like he's giving him a blowjob. Yeah? So he's like this, you know, pulling helmets off, pushing people away. And the governor's like, why are you being like this, Danny, looking in? He said, if you want me to move cell, get these idiots out and I'll move. So the governor, and some people have said this is wrong for me, it's a no-brainer. His staff are going to get hammered. They're going to get hurt. So if he's going to move and you're going to be humble, like my nan says, I'm going to be humble. So he says, Danny, will you please move to the special cell? So he's gone. Taking his kit and off he's gone. He took kit in there he shouldn't have taken in. A special cell in a segregation for your viewers who don't know. It's a bare room. There's no toilet. You get a bedpan, a bottle to piss in. You might get some cups of water, plastic cups. There's a plinth, concrete wooden plinth to sleep on. And you get a suicide blanket, which is exactly what it says. You know, they're tough and they're made so you can't make a noose and harm yourself. So he's gone into the special cell, but he's taking his kit. He shouldn't have taken that in. But obviously no one's going to say, Danny, you're not taking your kit in. You know, he's just leathered 11 staff. So I'm at home, Saturday night, 8 o'clock, just opened a can of Stones. That's a Sheffield beer, that. Have you ever had a Stones?
Yes, I have, back in the day.
Right, so my phone goes Strangeways. They never phoned me. I knew straight away, because I've been on Friday, Danny G. Picks the phone up. Officer Samworth, can you come in as part of Tornado? That's the geezers who are riot trained, or gals. Okay, put the phone down. My curry's ordered, that's coming. I've started my Stones. I thought, why have you done that? But at Strangeways, I used to moan because the Tornado team used to get to go on jollies. That's happy event. You know, you go to some prison, you sit in your kit for 36 hours, something gets sorted, you get paid for 36 hours and eat pizza. I never went on them. It were the same people who went. You know, my face didn't fit.
Yeah.
So I thought, I've been invited in. I do all the gobbing, so I'm going to turn up. We gets there. I looked at the 12 people who were there. 6 of them are CNR instructors. So they're the people in the prison who teach restraint. Yeah. You have a refresher every year, but on your course, they'll teach you how to restrain people. Like the doorman type shit, only more, you know.
Yeah.
Arm locks, wrist locks, that sort of thing, leg locks, how to take people down. It's a great system. It works for most prisoners and it stops people getting hurt, both staff and prisoners. Right, so I'm looking at the staff that were there. They're not the 12 people I'll have picked, but 6 of them are CNR instructors, so you'd expect them to be professional. If you differentiate between the 6 lads who I were part of, there were no lasses there. Somebody said something in a derogatory way, but what they meant was, there's no lasses here. There's no lass in that jail. I would have taken on that with me. And that's not being disrespectful. There's a lot of males I want to take with me. You know, this is the extreme end of dealing with prisoners.
You've got to have you've got to have the strongest 11. It's like
but we didn't. We didn't because it's a voluntary thing.
Yeah.
I know shithouses who were phoned up who could have come in who knocked it back. So anyway, these 6 officers like me, 6 CNR instructors, they've got all their fancy gear. They look like squats. Now that's something you do with weights, isn't it?
Yeah.
SWAT.
What?
So they look like SWAT. They've got German helmets. Don't laugh. With goggles. Yeah. Their outfits fit. Ours, we like a rag bunch, you know. I'm 6 foot 18 stone. My overalls fit with a bit of space. The guy next to me is 5'2", 10 stone with same size overalls on. So, you know what I mean? Anyway, they've got a bit of a plan. Again, like you asked me about starting at Strangeways and told you about Forest Bank, it's like a rugby game, this. Every single rugby game I've ever played, whether it was a cup final or a friendly, I've got knots in my stomach, adrenaline. Before I left my home, might I add, I vacated my bowels.
No surprise.
There you go. There you go. All the best doormen do that. All the best doormen do that.
Yeah.
So, where are we? So the plan is we're going to go in. The 6 CNR instructors are going in first. We're going in single file, like you see squad do. Little shield at the front.
Yeah.
6 guys. Then we're following on. Another 6 guys with another little shield.
Yeah.
The main man who was taking it, the CNR coordinator, says to me and another guy, "You're taking a brushing." Yeah. Now, he didn't like me. I was probably the biggest lad there. And it was his way at sort of having a dig, yeah?
Yeah.
So us 10 will fight him. You 2 can sweep up all the debris. So I took it on chin. I'm still thinking, I've got a knot in my stomach. They're all laughing and joking. You know, I'm thinking, it's not going to go well, this, lads. Anyway, we goes into the cell. So these 6 guys at the front, then us. 2 things. First one, no one's looked in the cell because all the observation places in the cell, Danny G has covered with wet bog roll. So you can't see in. So the lights are off. Yeah? So 12 of us in single file have gone steaming in the cell with the lights off. The other point is the actual plinth he's laid on, he's not laying like a normal person with his head at the top. He's laid the opposite way. Plus, there's all water and debris on the floor. So as everyone's pushed in, they've all gone arse over tit. 6 or 7 of them have ended up on his legs and nobody's on his top half. Yeah? So I'm probably laughing me. You know, that nervous laugh. Yeah? I must have done 2 brush strokes, yeah, before somebody said, "Get on his head." So I've took the brush and I'm on his top half, and there's only 2 of us, another Yorkshire lad. So if I was going to beat anybody on his top half of his body, it's with another Yorkshire lad, yeah?
Yeah.
Gilly. So he looks up at us, and we've got full helmets on, and we've also got balaclavas on, so you can't see us. So he says, "You dirty screw bastards, coming in when I'm asleep. You're having it." So now I'm thinking, how's this going to work? Now, others had already thought that, and they decided it was going to work by them getting off. So people start leaving the cell. He's still laid on his back at this point, but trying to get up. So the next few seconds are blurred, but we ended up at the cell door, but he ragged another lad back into the cell. Cartoon style, you know, grabbed his belt, his arms and his legs touched, and he pulled him back in. 4 of us went in, back in. drag this lad off him, and then it's a bit of the old, you know, 4 of us like this. One of the lads got one on his chin. Danny G went down, run him like a pack of dogs. 20 seconds of violence, however you want to put it. His legs were kicked from under him, that sort of thing. Got punched in the face. He covered up like any normal human being would, you know. Maybe a few tears. And then it allowed us to get up and withdraw out of the cell.
Yeah.
He was up on his feet very quick, that lad. When we went back in the room, half the lads, in fact, more than half the lads, weren't for going back in. Some of them, instead of waiting outside the cell for us like they should have, they've already gone back to the room we got changed. They've got their overalls off. They're not going back in. They're crying out, you know, bitching. And these are lads who are seeing our instructors.
Yeah.
Basically saying we should get the nationals in. Now, the nationals are prison officers who live and train for special events, extraction, going into places, working at height. You know, it's a premium job. They're usually ex-CNR instructors, so they train physical fitness, they train for working at heights, working up ladders, and they work usually in an advisory role. So because he's kicked off, some of these lads are screaming to get nationals in. Now at Strangeways, you can't do that. We've had a bit of trouble with Danny G. You need to deal with it. You can't, at the first sign of trouble, get the nationals in. Yeah. Anyway, cut a long story short, Danny's got a pair of goggles. He's took off one of officers. So he's dancing about in cell in his boxers with his goggles on, yeah? And he wants some burn. He wants to smoke. So again, looking at the situation, the PO said, give me the goggles. He said, give me a burn. So there's 2 things that happen. You get kitted back up and you go back in, which, you know, 8 or 9 out of the 12 are not having that. Or, you know, we've been in, we've shown him he's not getting away with, like, you know, trying to manipulate things. He's had a bit of a kick in. We give him some tobacco, get the goggles back, and we move on. And that's what happened, you know. So it was an eventful night. It got played back a lot, that event,
yeah,
by people who were there and people who weren't there. If you fast forward 2 years, I was once on the healthcare, and there was a prison officer sat next to me on overtime telling me about the night he went in to fight Danny G. Yeah. So I just sat there. I didn't say anything, you know, I just smiled and nodded and shit like that. So there you go.
Great. That's great stuff. Someone else with a lethal jab on the outside was Harold Shipman, and I believe you came across Harold Shipman on the inside.
I didn't actually. What I will tell you about that guy. He wasn't a nice man.
Yeah.
You know, he was horrible with the nursing staff. He got a mouth on him. He was disrespectful. He complained a lot. Used his solicitor, and I believe what he actually did when he took his own life, it was very calculated. He took his own life at a time that stopped people who had lost loved ones to him getting their property back.
Yeah.
So over this night, his missus became very rich because obviously he got people to change the wills. He'd acquired physical property, jewelry and things like that. There was going to be some sort of trial in order for people to get the property back. Yeah. And he killed himself, which sort of quashed it. But certainly one of my good friends who's now left, who's a nurse, said, you know, she said he was just horrible, Sam. He talked to people like shit. He was disrespectful. He wasn't a nice man at all. And obviously, you know, the thing he did was just, biggest. You know, you can't even say anything about that. I can't even imagine.
Biggest serial killer in.
Can't even imagine. But certainly, capital punishment again. People like him. That's why we should have it. You know, beyond doubt, taken, because if he, I always go back to. Did you ever meet Brady?
No.
Ian Brady. Right. Yeah. So Ian Brady, again, heinous crimes. For me, the families of them kids he killed were tortured all their lives while ever he was alive, because he was constantly in the press.
Yeah.
And you know, every time he's in the press, whether it's good things or bad, or he's on a food refusal or whatever, it's not allowing them to move on, is it?
No.
And the fact he never told, you know, he's never told them where he buried them kids. So again, if once he was found guilty, if he'd have been hung or lethal injection or whatever, then at least they'd have known he was no longer on the planet.
No,
So
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. People like Peter Sutcliffe, you know, Dennis Nielsen, you know, Rose West, all of those people who, beyond all reasonable doubt, committed those crimes. You know, it's taxpayers' money. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. They're living in luxury. I mean, I saw recently at the start of the COVID-19 outbreak, Peter Sutcliffe was complaining about, you know, the state of affairs in prison, and there was one horrendous story I heard, and I'm not sure whether it was on a podcast or whether I heard it on the news, but he actually has a skin disorder, Peter Sutcliffe, and he has to have a massage each day by nurses, female nurses, on his toes, on his body. Can you imagine the women having to do that to that kind of serial killer, the man who went out and murdered 13 women in cold blood?
see, that for me is where human rights stop. There is people who will say, you know, there's good in everyone or whatever. That is sort of, you know, it's above him. He's sort of taking a piss out of the system, really, isn't it?
Of course it is. Did you ever come across the Noonans?
Yes, I did.
What were they like?
I had no liking for the Noonans. Obviously, when I first went over to Manchester, I don't, like I said, we said the other day, if you mentioned big names in Sheffield, I'd know them, or South Yorkshire maybe. Manchester, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know about the gangs. I didn't know about the Noonans. You know, it's just, Manchester's very different from Yorkshire. You know, from Sheffield, it was a culture change for me. How people are, how they behave, and things like that. I've got some good friends who are Manx or from Greater Manchester or whatever. It's nothing like that, but it's just, you know, sometimes these people are portrayed as heroes or whatever because of where they grow up and things like that, and they committed some heinous crimes at the end of the day. And you know, if you take Desi, his brother, who got stabbed by his drug dealer or whatever, or whoever he was getting his drugs off, you know, done some horrible things. A lot of people talk about him with sort of glossy-eyed Robin Hood type images.
Yeah.
You know, if there is people who have murdered. I know one guy. He's a cracking guy now. He's changed his life. He did a life sentence. You know, who's moved away from that. You know, he says he has genuine remorse and things like that. But these people are talked about, and it's quite sickening. It's almost like the community's brainwashed or whatever. But certainly, if you played in them circles, you know, weren't nice. Incidentally, two nephews, two young Noonans, we had them in as young 21-year-olds on Strangeways. Two twins they are, and I don't know where they're at now, but obviously they were going to be following in Uncle's footpaths. Now, they were identical twins. I couldn't tell them apart. One had sort of got some humanity. The other one, ruthless.
Yeah.
You know, so you can look at things. The thing is, you hear stories, you know, almost legendary stories about Desi fighting so-and-so or something like that. When you're in them worlds, like the prisoners I talk to, there's a lot of unsolved deaths by the police in Manchester, like they will be everywhere. Well, the general population know who killed who, why they were killed, the circumstances and everything. And these people used to tell me things like this. I mean, obviously, you know, that was for my, you know, you talk, they get to trust you. So you talk about things like yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I just found it interesting how some people operate and some of the things happen. But there was a young lad at Forest Bank, he was 18, he was called Justin Maynard. Silly lad. He was tall, lanky, gangly, funny, you know. I'm not sure whether he was a gang member or not, but I remember driving into Forest Bank before I left, and it come over the radio, Justin Maynard had been shot. I think he was shot in the head. It's gone down as unsolved murder. But having known that lad for 6 months as a young offender, and you know,
yeah,
it don't matter what anyone had said back to me or he was doing, you could see he was just a young man. So a lot of these people are bad people.
yeah.
Some of the communities sort of look up to him or whatever. So he's quite a difficult one to talk to because, like you say yourself, you don't want to put yourself in trouble. Because there is one or two people I've come across, only one or two, who I've maybe thought if I ever met them on the out, something might happen. One of them, I was in Bury. I was working at a kids' home in between Forest Bank and starting at Strangeways. And I had 3 young lads with me, Rob, Zach and Kieran, who were like 12, 11 and 8. And I saw this lad, I can't remember his name, been down a block at Forest Bank. And he said, if you ever saw me, we're going to stab me. If you ever saw me. Yeah. And he was one of them. He was dead critical. Handy lad as well. But he used weapons, not his fist. And I saw him in Bury. We'd come out at Bass with these 3 kids. And I saw him, and instantly, you know, hairs on the back of my neck, middle of the day. So he starts walking across road. So I turned to the lads. Zach Eldest says, right, cop shop. We're literally 100 metres away. I said, just go in cop shop and wait for me there. Kieran, who's 8 or 9, nah, if you're having a fight, I'm watching. I'm like, get up there. You know, Zach, take him up there.
Yeah.
So they sort of started walking off like. Anyway, walked up, stopped about a metre away, held his hand out. So I didn't hesitate, held my hand out, shook his hand. He says, look, I know we bashed heads on inside. I know if I ever saw you. And I saw your face and you thought that it was going to happen now, didn't you? I thought, yeah, something was going to happen. He says, you know, I'm sorry for that. You know, you weren't a bad person. It's just how it was.
Yeah.
So, you know, but if you cross some of these people, you know, I'm no doubt you'd be in a bad place.
You also had a couple of celebrities inside, didn't you? One of them was my good friend Bez from the Happy Mondays, and another man, Ian Brown, who was the lead singer, of course, of the Stone Roses. What was it like having celebrities in prison?
Bez, like we've already said, very unassuming. Yeah, he was obviously well liked. He was well known. When he went on the wing, I don't think he had a lot of anything. I think he was on H wing, so it was sort of the detox wing. I don't know whether it was put on there for that, but it's also a very quiet wing.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of trouble on there. It's not a big wing. Just very unassuming guy. I saw him on visits. I didn't actually work with him. You know, I weren't on that wing. But I saw him milling about and people, you know, asking him to do a dance and, you know.
Did he oblige?
I've no idea. I've no doubt he did. But like I say, he was very unassuming and not humble. Again, we'll come back to that word, very humble. Ian Brown, again, he was on the same wing. I wouldn't have known him from Adam, mate.
Yeah.
Someone pointed it out to me. They give him a cleaner's job. Came in, did his time. Very unassuming, humble again. You know, not look at me or anything like that. Just very, very quiet lad. I will talk about one sort of celeb that you'll probably know. Joey Barton.
Oh, of course. He was in prison, and he was a Newcastle United player at the time.
Yes, he was. So Joey, as staff used to say. Very immature. I come across him a few times. He got special treatment in that jail. He was put on the detox wing. When I say detox wing, you have to do them little, you know, drug-free wing. There is no such thing. However, it was a fairly quiet wing. Not a lot happened. And if you're a celebrity, that's where you may put him. So he was on there. He got a job on the wing quite quick. And he also got the prestige job in any jail. He also got the gym orderly. Now, I don't think the gym lads were happy about that. They picked gym orderly. You know, he's going to be that job. They take him over in the morning. They can have the dinner over there. They can train when they want. They wash the towels, keep everything clean. It is an elite job. And I think he was given that job outside our prison. I think our prison was basically told he's got to be able to stay fit, got to look after him. You know, And on the wing, like I say, he was very immature. You know, running about the place, signing autographs for Mars bars and stuff like that. The staff were all like, "It's Joey, it's Joey." It used to get on my tits. You know, he'd go flying past you on stage, you'd be like, "Lad, stop running." You know, and somebody go, "It's all right, it's Joey, it's our Joey." So he didn't do any odd time. So if he ever writes a book and says that he did odd time in Strangeways, let me tell you, he didn't. However, when I first started at Strangeways, 2-6, they built a special unit on the healthcare, 2 cells. They blocked it all off. And we had young Barton, 18, his brother, and his cousin who were 21. And one of them 2 stuck an ice pick in someone's head in Huyton, Liverpool. Now, at 18, he was too young for our jail, which is why they built a small unit. Now, his brother was super immature. I spent a lot of nights. Good money, Steve. He got his cousin there who were a gobshite. I didn't have nothing to do with him. But young Barton, 18, he'd be in the cell. We'd have a little TV, DVDs, you know, because at the end of the day, we're a young lad. He was in an adult jail. He couldn't really go anywhere within the jail. So I did a lot of nights. The manager who ran that unit says to me, you know, I says, "Listen, phone me all the time." So go on there, 12-hour nights, overtime, watching DVDs, young Barton, very immature. For me, it was his ice pick. His cousin did it.
Right.
So I don't know that for definite. You know, I'm not a forensics expert, but for me, looking at the 2 lads, his cousin was a proper badass. The young one was just daft and stupid like his older brother, and probably easily influenced, and very immature. So
a lot of those cases, sadly in prison. I've got to ask you about the incident, which again I've heard on the lads podcast, Sean Atwood and James English. And if you hadn't had time to check them out, please do. There was a horrendous incident where you had somebody who would constantly try and set themselves alight.
Yeah, it's funnily enough, it's the lad I talked about. You know, tried to cut his throat.
Yeah.
You know, I also saw him cut himself 6 times down to wood with a razor blade. Literally, again, this isn't, you know, just, I'm like, what are you doing that for? You know, I had a good rapport with him. Yeah, he before I went on the healthcare, the worst case that he did, I did see the aftermath, obviously. He bought a couple of bags of sugar. This guy was, he was a personality disorder, probably dangerous and antisocial personality disorders. Some of the most difficult prisoners I've ever come across are personality disorders. So what he'd done, and again, you know, for all those people out there who think self-harming is about manipulation, he gained nothing from this, nothing at all. He got pissed off one day. He'd got a couple of bags of sugar in his cell. He tied the bottom of his tracksuit bottoms with his shoelaces, put the bags of sugar in, and set his trackies on fire. So as you know, nylon, the sugar burning. I saw the aftermath. I saw his legs, Steve. He couldn't walk straight. You know, bottom of his legs were almost like twigs, really heavily scarred. One of his calf muscles was almost gone. So he'd done that, and then it was quite funny, actually. I remember the night. One of the staff said to me, he's been on one all day. So I'm on nights. What he used to do at night on the healthcare, he'd go round, settle everyone down. Are you all right? Do you need a brew? You know, you had a hatch, so you could take a cup off them, give them a brew or whatever. Just let them know you were on, and sort of try and keep it as quiet and as settled as you can. So this night, you know, I could tell he was off one, so I took the hose pipe. We have a hose pipe in a locked unit. I'd unlocked it so it was outside his cell. Anyway, a lot of people have questioned this, and if they knew him, they won't question me. So early hours at morning, music's a bit loud. So if it was loud, you'd warn somebody. But I also had a key, so outside the cell they had a box. So if someone's booming the radio out so no one can sleep, you can turn the power off. But his were loud. So I went to his cell, observation panel looked in. So the light's on, he's facing the window. So he's not looking at me. and he's dancing to Firestarter, you know, with his rickety, burnt out legs. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm a Firestarter. He got a really deep voice as well because he'd cut his throat before. He'd had tracheotomies and stuff like that. And quite often, people who've had operations there, you know, they have quite a husky voice.
Yeah.
I always describe him as a cross between sort of Penguin and Gollum or something like that. So he's dancing away. So I've got the hose pipe, you know, it's just a twist action. So I'm sort of calling him, turns round, give it him full in the face. Not one word did he say. He just started to light his tracky bottoms. When he heard me, turned round, he got it full in the face. I went up and down him half a dozen times. I soaked the bed. I soaked everything. His radio died. His radio in the corner. You know, give it plenty of hose pipe or whatever. Cell completely wet. He's not said a word. He's still staring at me with this anger in his eyes. Yeah. Shut the hatch. I went back into the office. Little nurse there. Fantastic lass. I said, cell fire. So she jumps up. I went, no, put it out. I phoned the night manager. I said, right, I haven't pressed an alarm bell. We've had a fire. I put it out. The lad's in his cell. The cell's soaked. You can't light another fire. When you come on your rounds, deal with the paperwork and that. They were happy with that.
Great work.
4 o'clock it. Hey?
Great work, lad.
Well, I actually found a letter the other day from the wing, from the #1 governor. Now and again, you'll get a letter. You know, if you've done some, put a fire out or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I've got 2 letters. One for the Danny G incident, yeah, and one for this incident. 5 days apart, mate. I never knew that.
Wow.
So that's exact. And I've still got them letters.
What a week.
When we meet, not if, when we meet,
yeah,
I'll bring them along so you can have a look.
Fantastic.
So let me tell you about this lad, and you'll understand how I am now. 4 o'clock in the morning, his bell goes, emergency cell bell. So it goes, Mr. Samworth, I'm fucking freezing. This is what you have to understand about prisoners. I've soaked him. I've knackered his radio. It's Mr. Samworth, not you, you fat, bald-headed Yorkshire twat. Mr. Samworth, I'm freezing. So I said, would you like some bedding? Yes, please. So I went and got him some clean bedding. Yeah. Took his mattress off the bed, made a little bed. I said, would you like a brew? He says, yeah, I would. So he gave me his cup, tea bag in it. That's what he used to do. I went and got him some hot water. I was very careful handing it back. You know, I didn't want it in my face. Yeah. He got his head down for the night. And that's how I always was. You know, the fact that he'd set it, but also I had a good rapport with him. Like I say, I've seen him arm himself, cut himself to the bone. I wouldn't say like, but he made me laugh and I found him super interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the staff hated him because he was dangerous. He was assaultative. There's that word again.
Yeah.
But I found him interesting. He was a fascinating character. The last I know, he went to Rampton because, you know, he was a dangerous, like I said, antisocial personality disorder, horrific self-harming. He went to Rampton. One of my friends who's a nurse knows somebody there. And we don't know what happened then. I would imagine he will either die by getting blood poisoning or something stupid like that, or he'll never get out of prison. I don't know, mate.
Have you ever watched the program, the American program, 60 Days in Jail?
Yes, I have.
Do you think, because we always seem to copy American TV at some point, do you think you could get away with doing something like that in the English prison system?
Yeah, you possibly could. And
what do you think they would discover? Do you think there would be a similar kind of, you know, I don't know, expose, shall we say, of prison officers and the staff and you know, what's going wrong in British prison?
Right. Let me tell you, I break prison officers into 3 characters. The percentages change depending where I am in my life on reflection. I've said it in past, a third were bad, whether that's lazy, which doesn't help anyone, you know, won't do anything, bullies of prisoners or bullies of staff. A third are good people, but don't have the strength of character to be themselves. It's a tough environment. It's a really tough environment. And I think that's why a lot of people get stressed besides the job and drink a lot, because they can't be themselves. The amount of people that would say to me, oh, I'd say, he's a dick him, and they'd say, oh, you want to see him outside, he's a different person. And I'd say, why? Why is he different? And then a third are really good. Like I said, that percentage might change depending how I'm thinking or looking back, you know. But as long as you've got good people who try, then there's a chance. Yeah. The problem is now, all these youngsters coming in, you know, no life experiences. The experience is going. People are just, they're coming to the wit's end, they're going sick, and they're getting finished. So, you know, it's bad now. In a couple of years, there's going to be no experience anywhere, which is a dire situation. The thing about American prison, you know, they sort of had to coach them people, didn't they?
Yeah.
Because one or two of them were going to get themselves in trouble. But the American system sort of monitors itself. The staff are on the outside looking in. You know, the gangs, you're with that gang, you're with that gang. You can do this, that's acceptable, this isn't. They sort of police themselves and dish out the judgment. Whereas a British prison system is a little different because the staff try and run the prison. Yeah, they're not on the outside looking in. But, you know, there's plenty of prisoners who'd be honest, if they were honest. I'd tell you what it's like. I've had so many contact me through doing a podcast with James and Sean. Ex-customers, I like to say. I don't like to put that stigma of ex-prisoner. If you've got that, you know, it's going to follow you forever. So I always say ex-customers. Loads have contacted me. People I never expected. You know, bought the book, watched the podcast. You know, I was on B-Wing at Forest Bank. You remember me? I remember them all. Can't always remember the name, but when I see a face. So, but they'll tell you, all their experiences will be totally different. You know, 95% of lads who come in jail just try and do the time. And for me, so long as no one's getting hurt, what they're doing behind the scenes, you know, you have to deal with that. You can't. I'll give you an instance, Steve. Are we still all right for time, mate?
Perfect, mate. As long as you are, I am.
Right. Okay. So I'll give you, for instance, I was at Forest Bank on F-Wing just before I left, about 2004. I have told this story before, but it shows perfectly. So one day, they'd been out all day, probably a weekend, maybe. I've stood pretty much like you see on these mad films where someone's in their own world stood and the world's going around behind them.
Yeah.
So I've stood on the wing and I've watched. And you can see who's dealing drugs. You can see who's doing the drug running. And I'm amazed. So at night, I ended up confronting a lad from Salford. Now, I got on with him. This is important. I got on with him because, like I said, they see you every day. They see how you are. You can blag someone that you're a nice person for a day or two. But when they see you week in, week out, you know, dealing with people and all your interactions, they know what you're like. So he was an handy lad, first of all. And I mean, a well-handy lad. So someone's handed him something. So in his hand, he's probably a bag of heroin. Quite a big bag. I don't know weight-wise, but it was a big bag. Couldn't close his fist. So I've said, what have you got in your hand? So he sort of said, look, Mr. Samworth, you probably know what you've got in your hand. I'm not going to give it you. Now, there's 3 or 4 other lads there. So he said to me, and it was close to bang-up time, this. You know, he used to bang them up about 8, 8:15. He says, Mr. Samworth, I'm not going to do anything, but I'm not giving it you, right? He says, I don't know about these other lads. I don't know them all. He says, but if you want, he says, I'll go behind my door now and you can lock me in. And you can do your security report, you know, and in the morning, search team will come in and they can search myself. So there's 2 things there. One, we had that understanding, you know, and I don't believe he would have done anything. And other, it gave me a way out. Because at this point, I'm on my own and I'm thinking, you know, what the fuck do I do here now? So he walked behind his door and I locked him in. And these other lads went off elsewhere. Yeah, because there'd be other drugs on the wing.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how it is that. And what's missing from the prison service now, and I don't care what anyone at the top says or any bullshit managers or governors who are not in touch. That's called dynamic security. That is the relationships me and other staff have with prisoners. Some of them You know, when I was at Strangeways before I left, I'd known them 15 years, yeah? And they know I'm a good person. So if I was on K-Wing and someone's new and I'd had a bit of a set to, they might be saying to their pad mate, that bald-headed Yorkshire twat, again, you know, he's a fucking knobhead. I'm gonna banjo him. And they'd be saying, hold on a minute, if you're on about Mr. Samworth, he's a decent lad, him, he'll sort his stuff out. And the amount of work I had on K-Wing was way more than anybody else because all the lads I knew, you know, people, are you Mr. Samworth? Who sent you? Him. Come on. They're becoming short time to get stuff sorted out because they rely on you. But then relationships, like Bob, who sadly passed and that, when I was on K-Wing, it was a brutal, brutal regime. 200 prisoners, 35 gangbangers. You had Gooch and Doddington, 35 gangbangers, you know, 15 of one, 20 at other on the same wing, some on the same landing. You know, we had all the disrupted prisoners, mental health prisoners, and it was that dynamic security. It was electric, Steve. I loved it. Before the management changed on K-Wing, 2 years, and all my friends will tell you, buzzed off it. It was electric, it was exciting, it was scary. But those relationships, see, when prisoners are out, you get to know him. What's up with Smithy? He looks a bit down. Is he getting bullied? What's up with him? He's off his tits. You know, and you got someone off the tits who you knew. Smithy, go behind your door. Why? Because you're off your tits. I don't want you causing trouble. Mr. Samworth, behind your door, please. Lock him in. Yeah? And it's that staff-prisoner relationships. Now, there's not enough staff to run a regime and keep prisoners out. So there's no relationships anymore. It's task-orientated. Nobody's getting to know anybody. You know, so coming out of a cell and twatting whoever, it don't mean anything. You don't know them. You ain't got no relationship with them. And that's why it's rat shit now.
My last questions to you, before we talk a little bit about the books, before the end of the podcast. What advice would you give, first and foremost, to any new, you know, prison officer? And what advice would you give to someone going into prison, an inmate for the first time?
Right, let's deal with the prisoners. Dead easy, that. If you're new to it, you know, don't trust anyone. What I mean by that is, you know, you will make acquaintances quite quick. You see lads come in, and within a couple of days, they'll be talking to people. They'll get on with a cellmate and that. You know, they're pretty good at that.
Yeah.
Don't get into debt. Don't borrow anything. You know, if you like a bit of spice or whatever, do not borrow it because you're going to get yourself in debt. And once you're in debt, you're in a bad place. That's why bullying's gone through the roof. That lad I was on about in Manchester who lived near me, I think they changed canteen day to Fridays. That's when you can buy, you know, your coffee, tea, if you've got money or whatever.
Yeah.
He says they called it Black Eye Friday because that many people were in debt. He says literally, Samo, off the wing had black eyes, you know, because he says I didn't like lending anything. So if I lend you something and you don't give it me, first of all, I want it back to sell it, what you borrowed, but I've got to bang you then. And what's happening, he said, that never used to happen. I bang someone on the wing and threaten them, they're grassing. So they'll go and say he's banged me. That way they'll get moved off the wing and think they've got rid of the debt. Yeah. So if you're going into prison, yeah, be a bit humble. Yeah. Don't borrow anything. And you know, just take it steady. I know it doesn't sound like a lot of advice, but you don't want to be getting in debt.
Yeah.
And don't go down that drug path. There's so many that have never taken drugs that are using them. As a prison officer, do you know what? Quite a few people have done this as well. I've had people contact me who are in the job, young in service, who've sort of said, can you speak to me because nobody understands me? And I've told them, you know, if you need to ask your family, you've got to look after your mental health. There's people who were going for a job as an officer who I've spoke to, who sacked it. One lass said to me, I'm going on holiday. She says, you know, I'm not sure whether to take this job. What do you think? I said, buy me a book, take it on holiday, come back. She says, read your book, fucked it off. I'm going for a different profession. You know, there's a lad I'm talking to now who is very astute. He's been in 25 years. He's sort of mid-40s. He knows himself. He says, look, Sam, this is where I'm at. I'm obviously, I'm well in now. you know, I've been in 25 years. He says, I know it's affecting my family and that. What? Yeah, and some people just need a bit of, you know, but if you read the book and you still want to do it, or if you're going to give it a go, you know, but what's happening? A lot of young people are starting and just going sick and never going back. So it's not good. It's not good for anyone, that.
So you basically walked away from the job, and this is one of the things you're campaigning about. You know, you're a big supporter of the, you know, looking into the PTSD side of things, and a lot of people would just associate PTSD with maybe someone who's come back from the front. You know, maybe he's fighting for that country, but it's a lot wider than that, and it affects so many people, including, you know, your old job.
It does. So PTSD, I'm quite passionate about it, and I've sort of got my own little way of explaining it now. Talk about bad backs first. Most people have a bad back. Me, playing rugby, prop forward, I've got a bad back. What my bad back does or doesn't, it doesn't stop me riding my motorbike. Don't stop me walking my dog. Don't stop me doing some weights in garage still. You know, I can pretty much do anything I want. Maybe a couple of times a year, I'll be on strong painkillers. One of my friends, a lass, she's quite a bit younger than me, who has a bad back. She goes to a family wedding, dances for a few hours. Yeah, she's in bed for 2 weeks. She's looking, by the time she gets to mid-40s, she's going to be in a wheelchair. There's no chance of an operation, nothing it can do. I've got a bad back, she's got a bad back, massive difference. PTSD is like that for me, mate. I have actually, on reflection, recognised, like I said, when I fractured my skull, you know, that period of time and there were bad nightmares, you know, waking up covered in sweat, that's PTSD. It's how it affects your life. So some people might be in a road traffic accident, couple of months nightmares, you know, and that's as much as it is. I've seen prison officers who've not been involved in incidents, but on the outside looking in. So they've been there and maybe seen something that's happened and it's finished them. They've gone sick, you know, they've become unwell, gone to the doctor, gone on antidepressants, and they haven't been able to come back to the job. So we shouldn't judge people. Yeah, there will be scammers. There's going to be scammers all the time. People will use it to get what they want, and people always refer to that. Forget that. I'm not interested in anybody who is gaining something, you know, from blagging or whatever. What I'm interested in is all the people who suffer every day. I've got a mate who's a squaddy, an ex-prison officer. You know, he's had periods of time in hospital. Me, where I am now, I can speak quite clearly about it. 2020 has been the worst year for me since I left the prison service. Not what's happening in my life. In my life, you know, we're getting on. We've moved back to West Yorkshire. It's lovely. My sleep, it affects the most. I've been finished by prison service now 4 years, nearly 5 years since my last shift. I go to bed. I try and get in a routine. It don't matter. People who sleep, or if you say you're an insomniac, everyone's got a cure. You need to do this. You need to do. I've tried everything, mate. I'll go to bed from 1 while about 4 o'clock every morning. I just sit there thinking about things. It used to be just prison service. Now it's other stuff that's happened in my life. You know, when my mum was around, it's not all stressful. It's not all horrible, but I can't shut down. So sometimes I'll stop in bed while 6, so 5 hours awake. I've started getting up at 4 o'clock, take dog out, go in my garage, do a few weights or whatever. It doesn't stop me doing anything if I'm busy. Today's been a good day. Mrs. is off. You know, we've done stuff today. I'm talking to you. We'll get to 10 o'clock tonight. And even though I'm super tired, you know, it's been a good day. If there's days where I'm not doing anything, this lockdown, my brain's just been going all day. You're super tired, can't sleep, get to bed, can't sleep. So I've always said sleep is massively underrated. It'll probably finish me. You know, I'm reasonably fit for my age. We have got a history of heart attacks and strokes. It won't be that. It'll be the lack of sleep and the stress that brings. So PTSD, there's not enough people. And it's become apparent to me, a lot of people don't go anywhere. We've already said, men, shitloads of men from all professions have contacted me. I've seen your program, read the book. That could be me. I've read your book, you know, I'm a fireman, that's me. I've read it. What you're talking about, that's me. So I'm going to try and raise awareness. I've got some dates coming in now. I'm going to be going into schools talking about criminal justice system with kids. But, you know, I'm going to have a go at starting my own podcast. I want to talk about mental health, criminal justice. I always said with a book, if it helped one person, you know, which now I know it's helped lots of people have read it and contacted me. And what I do, Steve, I give them my number. I get messages on Messenger and Facebook, Twitter, you know, pages of messages. I type with one finger, I'm shite. I can't put punctuation. Punctuation, it takes forever. So what I do, I said, look, I can't, the same standard answer. I can't type for shite. I've read your message. I'm feeling you. Here's my number. And then I talk to people. And some people, it's only once. You know, we have a 2-hour chat and I never hear from them again. Others, maybe once a week. So, you know, that's as much as I can do. After lockdown, there's 2 dozen people. Some in Scotland, down Lincoln, down Leicester that I'm going to go meet. We've chat, PTSD, something in common, or just people who've struggled in life, you know, maybe found the partner hanging and they've struggled to get over that. So asking me questions and that. So when I say I'm talking to a lot of people, it's not like, you know, off the cuff again, I'm an angel. I just, you know, if someone's pouring their heart out, I'm not going to just text back, oh, thanks, cheers, mate, or whatever. I'm going to have a chat. And that's where I'm at. But certainly for me, this year's been horrendous. The sleep thing, but I'm not agitated. I'm super tired. You know, your temper goes a bit or something like that. But the next 6 months, hopefully, I'm going to be so busy doing things and trying to help people that, you know, it'll help me move on myself.
Honestly, it's a fantastic story, and credit to you. And the book, which you know, has been a bestseller on Amazon, Strangeways, a prison officer's story, Life Behind Bars with Britain's Most Notorious Criminals, by Neil Samworth. Check it out on Amazon. I will put a link in when we stick this up onto the YouTube channel. Writing the book, did you find it therapeutic?
Again, I'm glad you asked that. I work with a lovely writer, right? I'm an author. Like, you know, writers write books, maybe get a bit corrected. I work with a lovely writer. Fuck me up, mate. At the time, yeah, people like yourself have said, has it helped? Yes, it has. Spent 2 weeks with a writer. He taped about 45 hours, like we've just done. I sat down 5 days a week for 2 weeks, Holiday Inn, Junction 24, M62. Got a coffee. Put a dictaphone in front of me at 10 o'clock, 6-7 hours straight talking, life story, 10 days straight. The last day was structured. He said, you know, we could do with this, we could do with that. He fucked me up. I then had, that was 2017, we did that, October 2017. So the last 3 months, I was working with a writer, you know, trying to get as accurate as possible, not alienate any of my friends. You know, as something come to me, we'd put it in. Early 2018, before the book come out, I worked with the publisher, Pam McMillan, but Ingrid Connell, she was fantastic. She's like the publishing editor I work with. And then June, I did a week of, I went to Media City in Manchester, Radio Manchester, 5 Live. I did 5 Live Europe. Couple of Newsnight specials, loads of paper interviews, radio, everyone the same. Yeah, brilliant. Feel loads better. Do you know, back now on reflection, no, it worked good. The book come out, you have highs and lows, as you know, with publishing. This year has been my best year for positivity. You know, I'm not a negative person. I'm smiling, trying to get on with things. But, you know, the PTSD side, or not being able to switch off, you know, things are happening that I'm hoping are going to make things better. But, yeah, I told everyone. I went on Victoria Derbyshire, lovely lass Chloe says, you know, you're better. And I said to her, yeah, last couple of months, I feel a lot better. Looking back now, no, I weren't that good. You know, it might be that I've sort of not helped myself by immersing myself in it. Yeah. You know, people are contacting me, but it gives me a lot of pleasure speaking to people who are struggling, you know, and helping them. So I'm going to carry on the same path. this year's been the best year for sort of, I can talk like now with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we go back to the first interview with Sean, it fucked me up for about a week talking about it. Less so now. I could talk all day now, and it's sort of, it's far enough away not to, you know, sort of grind on your nerves or whatever.
Yeah.
But I am getting better. You know, again, it's not me saying to people, oh, I want some sympathy or something like that. It's just a process. For other people, it'll be worse. There's people that will, you know, be in and out of hospital and struggle mental breakdowns through PTSD and stuff like that. It's how it affects you in your life. I think what it is with any mental health, if you get anything happening, like when we moved house last year, I wanted to get away from Manchester, leave it behind. We've moved back to Yorkshire. We're near to our lass's mum's in Sheffield, you know, Wakefield. It's lovely and quiet, but it fucked me up.
Yeah.
You know, moving's stressful. I expected to land here and be super joyful straight away, and it just got me down, you know. So you see what I mean? But like you said, a lot of people, especially men, they don't talk about things.
No, and that's
the amount.
That's the thing. We don't talk, we're programmed not to talk about things, and I think that's maybe we are the last era. I don't know, the way that you were brought up, the way that I was brought up, although different. You know, we probably were still encouraged in you know, not to show our emotions. You know, I know you didn't see a great deal of your dad; he was always away, etc. Whereas, you know, I can tell you now, I didn't really see my dad cry. So it's one of those things where, you know, I go to funerals, etc. I don't cry. I don't think I've cried at a funeral. Whereas I could sit and listen to a particular piece of music, or I could, you know, see something happen on my favorite television program, and I can end up flooding in tears. It's weird, but it's the way that I've been brought up. You know,
I quite often, you know, it was quite recent, maybe a week ago. So I put a little post on Twitter. It wasn't an attention seeker. I just said, you know, what I was trying to say is, look, not everyone sleeps at night, and some things affect you. And, you know, it was like 4 o'clock. I was thinking about something that had happened, and boom, floods of tears. And you just get up and get on. Oh, I can cry like that, which is not a bad thing, you know.
It's good for you.
But yeah, it's things are going the right way now. You know, super positive. Next 6 months, got lots of aspirations and that. And hopefully, like I said, I'm going to start seeing some of these people, you know, who I've been talking to and that. And that's going to bring me on. So yeah, it's all good.
The one thing I can say from the interview tonight, and obviously the interviews that you've done with me mates James and Sean, is that, you know, you'll have a big success with your podcast, and it comes from a completely different angle. And I think, you know, I've spent a lot of my, you know, last 20 years certainly writing books and visiting different inmates and different prisoners, and you know, it's refreshing to hear it from the other side, because, to be honest, prison officers, all they are to me are, you know, people who pat me down, people who look me up and down. People, you know, I've been in so many maximum security prisons. I've been in Broadmoor Hospital to visit Ronnie Cray. I've been to virtually every maximum security prison over the last 25 years. Whether I'm visiting the Crays, whether I was visiting John Sayers and Stephen Sayers, whether I was visiting Charles Salvador. You know, I've been to them all, and yeah, I've found a lot of the prison officers to be really friendly. You know, I mean, I think for me, out of all the prisons I've visited over the years, I would probably say that Wakefield was probably the most welcoming. You know, I've been there very recently, you know, to see Charlie when he was last down there. John Sayers was in there for a couple of years on remand. But yeah, I quite like that. And Milton Keynes, Wood Hill was quite good as well. The staff were prepared to have a chat with you, have a bit of banter with you. You know what I mean? But you sometimes hear, you know, stories from inmates or whatever saying, oh, you know, the screws here are awful and they're bad. You know, they take the piss, they take liberties. But it's, you know, from a visitor's point of view, it's completely different. You know, I haven't been emotionally tied with a lot of the people who I've visited, but I've seen exactly what you'll have seen when, you know, people come into prison. You see the misery it leaves with families when you're sitting in that waiting room and you've handed the VO in. It's pains, you know, it's awful to see, you know, a young girl, maybe he's in her early 20s with 2 kids in a pushchair, and she's coming in and just coming to visit somebody who's in there for, you know, maybe a 10 stretch, you know, for an armed robbery of a news agent or something. It's hard.
Thankless, yeah.
It's heartbreaking, and it's not just the person who's inside who suffer. They have it easy, really. It's the woman on the outside with the kids. You see both sides of it.
A lot of lads, you know, when they get big sentences, been the partners.
Yeah.
Seen plenty of that. You know,
Tough.
they just become such big assholes that the partner's been them, but they do it on purpose.
Yeah.
You know, that's another side of it. I've met kids who have definitely got PTSD from visiting the loved ones in prison. You know, again, okay, people recognise that it's quite disturbing, but I don't think they realise how much it can affect them. You know, when you're in visits all at Strangeways, kids are milling about, you know, with the chocolate bars and that. Well, you know, lad and lass are sort of looking gooey-eyed at each other. But, you know, it definitely affects them. I know that. One of my friends who's an ex-customer, I spoke to two of his daughters. One of them is so pissed at him because he was never there, because he was locked up. You know, she felt she grew up without a dad. And then the other one visited him a good while on his sentence. It's destroyed her. You know, it gives her nightmares and stuff like that. So there's that side of it as well. You know, so overall, I mean, for me, if they want to start somewhere, I'm not bothered. Like I've already said, these politicians say, you need to get enough staff to do the job, enough staff to have a regime, get some purposeful activity, and let's start from there. So,
listen,
I'll tell you what, mate.
Yeah.
We need to chat face to face when this is over.
Yeah.
I have got hundreds of stories. You can ask me anything. If any of your viewers or whatever want to know any specifics, you know, like I say, I'll be on Great Britain talking to you. Are you there?
Yeah. We just lost you a little bit there. We got the gist of it though. Yeah. Anyone wants to contact you, of course, they can get onto Twitter.
If you tell them at Samworth Neil.
You're finally on there, because I remember watching your very first podcast and
I know.
You didn't have it, but you finally joined the world of Twitter, which is, by the way, it is mad. And I also heard on a couple of the other podcasts you were, you know, when you read the comments, I remember when you went back onto Sean Atwood's second time, you know, you said you read a few of the negative comments. My advice to you is ignore them. I've had so many
now over
the years. Just ignore them, mate.
Steve, Twitter. There's a dozen people on there I'm going to go and meet. There's people I'm talking to on there, DM'd me. You know, I've just read your book or whatever or stuff like that. So, yeah, the negative, I don't put negative posts, me. I try and be positive. If I see people who I'm following or following me is having a bit of down, I'll just DM, send them a message, you know, if you want to chat or whatever. That's all you can do. Again, it's not like look at me type thing. It's just, you know, how I am or whatever. So,
well, it's been a fascinating chat. I really, really enjoyed it. I knew I would. I just want to thank you, Sam, for coming on, and I look forward to meeting you. You know, once things get back to some kind of relative normality, I look forward to coming down. And who knows, I might break my habit of a lifetime and have another Stones.
It's been great to talk to you. I've really enjoyed it. I'd like to ask you some things as well. You know, when we hook up or whatever. Yeah,
that would be great, mate. Well, listen, when you do your podcast, I'll be more than happy to return the favour and come on as a guest, mate.
I much appreciate that, pal.
Listen, good luck, take care, and everybody, please make sure you buy Sam's book. As I say, a fantastic read. Get yourself a copy on Amazon now. Thank you very much, Sam. Take care. Thanks for joining us.
All the best, mate. Catch you later.
Bye-bye.